Do the Pledge of Allegiance. Next on our agenda is our time for public comments. We do have one public comment this evening. So Ms. Meadows, Susan Mathias, I'm sorry. Ms. Mathias, please come forward. You'll have 3 minutes at about the 2-minute and 30-second mark. There'll be a little chime to remind you of 30 seconds. The floor is yours. Thank you.
My name is Susan Mathias. I live in Dayton, Virginia. I come tonight because I have deep concerns for local education, specifically in relation to the use of vape, wax, and dab pens with high school and middle school students. And it has a very high concentration of THC. There's a rising epidemic in middle schools and high schools. I do plan to discuss this with my elected congressmen, elected officials, and also at the Rockingham County Superintendent meeting. It just happens to be the first meeting. I have a document that I would like to give each of you when I'm done. It's just QR codes to websites that I would like you to look at, and I'll get into that. I believe the use of the THC pens are a gateway to other drugs, like opioids. I've seen it with my own adult children, and now my grandchildren that I am raising that are already addicted to the pens. Yes, they are so highly concentrated that there is an addiction called cannabis use disorder. It's recognized by the National Institute of Drug Abuse and CDC. The document I want to share are QR codes to the website of Virginia Opioid Abatement Authority. I urge everyone on the board to take time this week to review all of the educational addiction prevention grants awarded to school systems in Virginia, used specifically for youth. Please consider how we can advocate for similar programs within Rockingham County. Although we missed the submission window, there are numerous entities like the Virginia Department of Education, Virginia Cooperative Extension Service, and Virginia Foundation for Healthy Youth that were awarded grants of a combined total of over $2.4 million for programs specifically that you may want to consider a request to participate in for drug addiction prevention, teacher education, and crisis response efforts. I would like to leave you with just a few numbers. 6. That's the number of private addiction centers, which often include peer counselors in the Harrisonburg area that only provide services for ages 18 and over. 0 pediatric units in Centera or Augusta Health. And finally, 0, the number of support groups or addiction centers that serve youth under the age of 18 within a 2 to 2.5 hour radius of where we're located. The only services are mental health counselors, and they're doing their best, but they do not have the resources to even refer parents or caregivers for intensive services. Please consider this.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, next on our list tonight are action items. We'll begin with the minutes. If there's a motion to approve the minutes for January 27th and February 26th of 25, we'll hear that motion.
I move we accept the minutes from January 27th and February 6th, 2025 as presented.
Thank you, Ms. Laura. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Burgoyne. Any questions or comments from board members? Hearing none, all those in favor say yes. Yes. All those opposed say no. Motion passes 5-0. Next on our list are field trips, and I believe Dr. Shiflett, we have quite a few again this week.
Yes, Chair Hurst and board members, I have several field trips for your consideration. Montevideo Middle School, the FCCLA State Leadership Conference, April 3rd through the 6th, 2 students, Virginia Beach. And then Broadway High School, the DECA State Leadership Conference, February 27th through March 2nd, 30 students, Virginia Beach. And the FFA Spring Leadership Conference, March 18th through the 19th in Wirtz, Virginia, 8 students. And I do recommend approval of these field trips.
Thank you, Dr. Shiflett. Board members, hearing the superintendent's recommendation, do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Cross. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Burgoyne. Board members, do you have any questions or comments?
I would like to point out a couple of these field trips. I'm noticing we're taking a school bus for 8 students to Wirtz, Virginia. And there's another one, the one at Montevideo. I think there were 2 students on that one. And they're sharing a bus with BHS. I just want to take this opportunity to point out that, and I drove a field trip to Blacksburg this week, 11 students. We're taking full buses that aren't full places. And it's because we just don't have any other vehicle, any other way to transport students, that number of students. So I'm going to make a plug again for vans or mini buses or something that's a little more economical to take 11, 12 students. So just want to point that out.
Thank
In
you,
this
Ms. Laura.
budget season, right?
Nice plug. Board members, do you have any other questions or comments?
Yeah. Well, if you're talking about 11 students, wouldn't they be able to take like the activity bus, Dr. Shipper or something like that, instead of taking a full-size bus?
Yes, and I think that's what Mrs. Laura is referring to is we have one of those buses at each of our 4 high schools. We do not have any at the middle school. Am I correct?
Essentially, yes. The mini buses are very, very popular and they're almost always used from what I'm hearing. I drove last Wednesday from Montevideo to TA, and I drove all the way to Blacksburg for teachers who couldn't get mini buses. We had to take a full-size bus because you can't get, and getting vans is also hard just because they're not available. So yeah, you can't take like a regular minivan.
Have you reached out to see if the middle schools reached out to the high school, if they're available during?
Yes, they absolutely are looking and trying to get them, and they're just super popular. They are, I mean, and
Are they busy?
yes.
For this trip?
I don't,
Check into that, and see if it's available, see if we could get them to be able to use that.
Sure, I'll be glad to explore that option.
It looks like to me, some of these students, maybe a minivan in some cases, but even like a 15-passenger van would work. And that might actually help us with bus drivers and transportation because you don't need your CDL to drive a 15-passenger bus. So I think that might be worth exploring just to see what we can do if we need to just expand the fleet. What do we have in the way of minivans? Sounds technical. Yeah.
we could get 11 kids and luggage into a 15-passenger van. And honestly, I've driven enough trips that I'm poking along in the bus or the mini bus that is governed at 60 miles an hour, and we're getting passed by other school divisions, literally passed by other school divisions that have a mini or have a 15-passenger van that they're driving 70 miles an hour and saves, I mean, I'm going to have to, so next Friday, I'm going to have to drive Elkton to Blacksburg because they couldn't get a minibus or a van. And I've got to leave my house like at 4:00 in the morning so that I can get to Montevideo so we can leave by 5:30 or 5 o'clock. We got to leave early, and I got to do my pre-op on my bus. So I've got to leave really early to get to Elkton so that we can get to Blacksburg by 9 o'clock. Whereas if we were taking a vehicle that could go faster, we wouldn't have to leave by 5:30 for sure. And that particular trip, I know Broadway, Montevideo, and Jay Frank are all carpooling in a bus, and they're meeting at Chick-fil-A at 5 a.m. to make it to Blacksburg in time. So fun times.
Thank you for volunteering.
Yeah. I was just going to say, I know you're not telling us that so that we know how involved you are, but I do want to just say thank you for driving because that is a big deal and that's very helpful to our programs. So,
Well, and I'm just sharing that because if not me, somebody's got to do it.
Somebody's gotta
If
do it.
I'm not
That's
doing
right.
it, somebody's doing it. And yeah, and we do what we need to for our kids, but maybe we can do better.
good plug, Ms. Laura. Board members, all those in favor of following the superintendent's recommendation to approve the field trips, say yes. Yes?
Yes.
All those opposed say no. Motion passes 5-0. Mr. Reed, I think you've got the next 3 items on our list. We'll just go right down through them. First up is the bid recommendation for Turner Ashby High School classroom renovation for our lab school.
Yes, Chair Horst, Dr. Shefflet, members of the board, the bid for the classroom renovation at Turner Ashby High School for JMU Lab School was specified and advertised. We had 7 firms that were sent bid package. We had 5 that attended the mandatory pre-bid conference and 4 firms responded with sealed bids. Our recommendation is to award the contract to the low bidder, Bridgestone Construction, in the amount of $62,995.39.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. Board members, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Cross. Do I have a second?
I'm going to second it, but then I'm going to ask for clarification because I think our superintendent was supposed to make a recommendation first.
Oh, I just
And-
jumped right
yeah.
on by that, didn't I?
And then,
Thank
but
you,
since
Ms.
we so
Laura.
moved it, so.
We so moved it and we are moving
We're
right
going to
along
pretend like that
tonight.
happened, but if we can clarify what we're voting on, that might be
Well,
good.
yes. Dr. Shiflett, would you like to jump in here and add anything?
So I can make the formal recommendation if you would like.
And I'm sure you did right before Mr. Cross. Yeah.
Yeah, well, now my computer's frozen, but great. I recommend awarding the bid for the classroom renovation for the JMU Lab School at Turner Ashby High School to the lowest bidder as presented by Steve Reed, Director of Maintenance.
Thank you, Dr. Shiflett. Mr. Cross, would you still like to make that motion? Thank you. And Ms. Laura, you still have a second.
I'm sure. Just
Are there any questions or comments for Mr. Reed this evening on this one?
I have questions.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware that we were renovating a classroom at TA. So can you expand, did you guys know? Can you expound on what they're doing? This is for the lab school.
Right. So the lab school takes a larger space.
Right.
So what we're doing is taking 2 classrooms and making it 1, taking the wall down in between. And then because of the increased size and the capacity of that room, we have to change the egress out of the room. So we've got to switch the doors around. So we've got to build alcoves in both of those spaces to switch the doors around, replacing the flooring so it matches, tying the ceiling together, painting the room, getting it ready for 1 space.
Are those classrooms being used right now for anything, or are these?
They were identified as rooms that were available by the school.
Okay.
When do you expect construction to start?
This would happen over next summer.
It would be summer.
Yeah,
Good.
this coming summer, I'm sorry, yes. I'll let Donna answer that question. I think that Spotswood has a location that works, but I'll let Donna answer that.
That's correct. Mr. Bingsley indicated that Spotswood has ample room for lab school. JMU that needed to have the room renovated. And JMU will be putting that cost.
Splitting the 60,000 or
62,000, yeah.
62,000? Okay, got it. Any other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor of awarding the bid for the classroom recommendation, or I'm sorry, awarding the bid for the classroom renovation at Turner Ashby High School to the lowest bidder. All those in favor say yes. Yes. All those opposed say no. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Mr. Reed, I believe you have the next one as well.
Yeah, so as part of VDOT's plans to widen Interstate 81, the bridge at Pleasant Valley Road is being replaced, and they are doing a roundabout. VDOT has approached us about an easement there for utilities and also a construction laydown area on our land during the replacement of the bridge. We've been in contact with them probably over the last 2 years working on this, and we've come to an agreement with them in principle on what that easement needs to be, what we have available for them to use, and what they need from us. After negotiations, we've agreed on about $120,000, $123, I think it is, and some change in exchange for being able to use these areas. There's going to be, like I say, a temporary construction easement. There's going to be electrical easement, a utilities easement, a permanent VDOT easement, and some other small construction easements that VDOT's going to need on the Pleasant Valley property. So it is our recommendation to approve the VDOT easement, including a perpetual roadway easement, permanent VDOT utility easement, a Dominion Virginia Power easement, VDOT temporary easement, and other utility easements at Pleasant Valley Elementary School.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. Dr. Shiflett?
Chair Hurst and board members, I recommend approving the VDOT easement at Pleasant Valley Elementary School as presented by Steve Reed, Director of Maintenance.
Thank you, Dr. Shiflett. Board members, do I hear a motion?
I move to approve the VDOT easement at Pleasant Valley Elementary School as presented by Steve Reed. Is that what Larry just said? I'm losing it.
No,
Sorry.
you're exactly.
That's
I got it right?
You
Okay.
read the right line.
You
yeah.
nailed it,
Director
Ms.
of
Burgoyne.
Maintenance. Got it. There we go.
Do I
Second.
have a second? Thank you, Ms. Lohr. Board members, are there any questions or comments for Mr. Reed on this item?
No, we worked with our design team to make sure that we're going to be okay.
And
Thank you, Mr.
for
Reed.
explaining some of that stuff. I know you talked to the board members about it, but
Mhm.
thank you for explaining that to the public.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Mr. Reed's been working on this a while. He did a great job advocating for our school division and for the needs of Pleasant Valley with their addition. It was a very good job.
Thank you.
All right, we're ready to vote. All those in favor to approve the VDOT easement at Pleasant Valley Elementary School, say yes.
Yes?
Yes. All those opposed say no. Motion passes 5-0. Mr. Reed, one more item.
So as some of you are aware, the County of Rockingham has constructed a domestic water pump station behind their old pump station at the Montevideo Middle School site. What I'm presenting now is cleaning up all the loose ends of transferring that land that the building stands on to the County of Rockingham, so it's no longer under our deed. So I recommend approval of a land transfer of 0.423 acres from Montevideo Middle School to the County of Rockingham for the Public Works Domestic Water Pump Station as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. Dr. Shiflett?
Chair Hurst and board members, I recommend approval of a land transfer 0.423 acres from Montevideo Middle School to the County of Rockingham for the Public Works Domestic Water Pump Station as presented by Steve Reed, Director of Maintenance.
Thank you, Dr. Shiflett. Board members, do I have a motion to follow the superintendent's recommendation?
I move to follow the superintendent's recommendation to approve a land transfer of 0.423 acres from Montevideo Middle School to the County of Rockingham for the Public Works Domestic Water Pump Station as presented by Steve Reed, Director of Maintenance.
Thank you, Ms. Cave. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Cross. Any questions or comments from board members? Another job well done, Mr. Reed.
Thank you.
All those in favor say yes. Yes.
Yes.
Those opposed say no. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Reed. Item number 6 is information items. We have several of those this evening. I believe we're going to start with Mr. Justin Moyers on some budget planning for the upcoming year.
Evening, Chair Horst, members of the board, Dr. Shiflett. First of all, I just want to take a moment and say something that I very much appreciate Steve and all the work he does for us. We have a lot of projects going on right now, and this easement project is a great example where he negotiated an additional $20,000 out of VDOT just by kind of keep holding them to the fire and making sure that they're doing what's best for RCPS. And so I know I very much appreciate it. He's always looking out for our interests. This evening on the budget, I do want to talk about revenues. We're going to go over the governor's proposed budget, and then I'll also mention the House and Senate version that has come out in the last week. So to start, the state budget is built on our composite index, which, as you all know, we talked about a lot last year as it changed. It stays the same for 2 years, so we'll be in the second year of our 2-year cycle. It also is based on our average daily membership, our ADM. And so those two numbers really drive what the state is going to give us on a given year. I will show you the local budget first. This is just miscellaneous income that we bring in as a school division. As of now, we project that to stay the same at $740,000 as it was the year previously. Then we will start looking at the state budget items. I'm not going to go over all these in detail, but I will mention a couple. Sales tax and basic aid flow back and forth. The state, depending on how much sales tax comes in, they will cut basic aid, or if sales tax is not as high, they'll raise it. So those numbers are always very fluid. The other numbers to notice for next year is there is a compensation supplement of $3,359,836. That is the state's money they're giving us for a 3% raise, is what the governor currently has included in that. The other large change is they are giving us at the very bottom of this page $2,831,622 for English learner teacher payments. So that number is quite a bit up, and that's based on our EL ratios and what we report to the state. On the next page, most of these state revenues stay the same, but if you look at the subtotal, so the governor's budget, if that were to pass, we would receive a total of $95,468,537. And that's an increase of $4,300,000 over what we receive currently this year. Now, the federal budget, that will stay very similar to what it was this year. Most of our programs are very static. They do not change a lot. So we're estimating a little under $6 million for that. And just for comparison's sake, for now, the local share of education I've shown is flat. And as you all know, we're in negotiations with the county now on that piece. Now, in the last week, the House and Senate of the state have also issued their budgets. And as of now, they are more favorable for Rockingham County. Both of them would give us at least about an additional $2.5 million on top of the 4.3 that I'm showing here. The other thing that both of those budgets do include is a 1% bonus for staff. So we're still just waiting to see their negotiations with the governor, how all that plays out. So we do at this point feel pretty good. We're going to get at least the 4.3 million because that's the lowest of the three, but it is possible that we will get more, and hopefully we'll know in the next month. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Board members? Questions for Mr. Moyers?
So 4.3 is what we would get additional from the governor's budget. And then possibly if the House or Senate version passes, that would be an additional 2.5 on top of that is what they projected. And that doesn't include the amount they would give us for the 1% bonus. That would be a separate piece that they would give us. So we're still just kind of waiting to see where it all plays out.
The governor's proposal has a 3% raise.
Correct.
And then you're saying the House and the Senate are including a 1% bonus.
And a 3% raise.
So 3% and
correct.
1% bonus.
Yes.
Okay.
As of now.
Okay.
Yeah. Then it's all
Fully
subject to
funded?
change.
Fully funded by them?
No. I could go on for hours.
Just double checking.
For us to discuss that, but no, that would, typically it's funded about 50%. The rest is funded locally.
Thank you.
Yep.
So that 2.5 million that we could, that extra that 100% goes to compensation?
No, it'll go to
Okay.
various things.
Okay,
They've outlined different things it would go to, but unless it's a priority that we're not already doing or an initiative we're not already doing, it's just money that we can use to fund however we want. There's very specific things we have to meet with the state for some of these pots of money, but we will overexceed all of them. So that's never an issue.
Okay, so it's not, it's not going to change the raise that we give,
Correct.
and it's just going to be more money in. Very good.
Yes, not money. The 2.5 would not be more money that we need to match. Yes.
That was my question.
Yeah.
Thank you for understanding me.
Yep.
Anything else?
Better, but definitely better than last year, right? Last year we had a revenue decrease from the state, so that's encouraging, but we have lots of needs, so we'll be working hard the next couple of weeks.
Thank you, Justin.
Yeah.
Appreciate your time. Ms. Williams is here to go over the federal program administrative review of our food and nutrition services. Thank you for coming on up here.
Chairman Hurst, members of the board, Dr. Shiflett, good evening. I'm here tonight to share a summary of the results of the federal program administrative review completed this school year of RCPS's Food and Nutrition Services program. The one-page summary that I have for you, that should be in your information packet for you. So I'll start with a brief overview of the Federal Program Administrative Review, or what we call the FPAR in the school food service world. So this review, it's completed by the VDOE Office of School Nutrition or School and Community Nutrition Programs to determine our program's compliance with federal and state regulations, and it's completed every 5 years. So with this review, there's an off-site and on-site component to the review. Prior to reviewers coming to visit school, the off-site portion of the review involves review of just about everything in our internal operations in food service. So this includes issuance of free and reduced meal benefits, resource management, food safety, meal pattern compliance, professional standards. And then for our on-site reviews, so reviewers came on site to 4 schools to observe a day of operations. So those schools were Mountain View, Pleasant Valley, TA, and Pence. Reviewers, again, they reviewed just about all parts of our daily operation, making sure staff were in compliance with rules and regulations. And so that on-site review took place the week of November 18th, and then our review closed up with an exit conference with Dr. Shiflett and Justin Moyers to close up the review. So the results of the review, overall, we had a successful review with no fiscal action taken. So with this review, it's not a pass-fail, but instead, if there is a finding, reviewers, they will determine if it qualifies as a corrective action or a technical assistance. And if the finding is significant enough, then there's the potential for having to pay back funds received for any meals that were found out of compliance. However, that did not happen to us. So when I say we had no fiscal action taken, we were found to be following menu and nutrition guidelines. Also about the review, I did want to share our food service staff received some well-earned commendations to professionalism, hospitality, and commitment to our students. So I wanted to say thank you to the food service managers and staff at Mountain View, Pleasant Valley, TA, and Pence. They put in a lot of hard work for the review. They take a lot of pride in what they do every day. So thank you to those staff at those schools. Next, I'm just going to go over a few of the technical assistant and corrective actions needing to be completed going forward from the review. So first, this is kind of just to get an idea of some of the internal processes they look at. So we will just have to update a few of our internal documents to reflect some recent changes made at the state level. So that is just in our internal food safety manuals, making sure we have the right structuring of regulations. We have it written the way that it needs to be written per VDOE. And then updating our dietary modification request form used by parents. Another corrective action that we will be completing is that our adult lunch prices will need to be increased from $4.50 to $4.75. This is to comply with federal regulations that adult meal prices must be at a certain price just to make sure that the federal funds that we receive, which are intended to feed students, are not subsidizing any food or supplies towards our adult meals. So we were just below the threshold for that. So that's why it needs to be bumped up to $4.75. Another corrective action to be completed is an update to school board policy JZP, which is our wellness policy. Usually, in between our federal reviews, there's changes that are made, to the wellness policy guidelines at the federal level, at the state level. So usually that is updated with every federal review we have. So so you'll see those, edits and recommendations with the next round of school board policies for review from Ms. Tennell. So that should be in the next couple months coming up. And last, just to mention, food services is finding a new 1.0 ounce equivalent pork sausage patty for next school year. So you're probably reading that and wondering what in the world. So the reason for that is our meal pattern and nutrition guidelines, they're so detailed that for each protein food item we serve, we have to have a calculation of that meat or protein product just to verify and make sure it's providing enough meat or protein for the meal at that grade level for that week. So we can't go by the weight alone. We have to take into account fat content, spices, water content. So the formulation for this sausage patty, it showed it only provided 0.75 ounces of meat. So we'll be replacing that next year. We have some other options out there. And that was the only food item we had like that. So just wanted to, again, highlight that for how in detail the review is. So that is all I have to share. Once all of the corrective actions are wrapped up, the review will be closed and then it's public information at that point. But I'll gladly take any questions you have right now. Thank you.
Board members, any questions for Ms. Williams?
I don't have any questions. I was going to question the $4.75 thing because it had been posed to me from several different people. So I would just encourage, Ms. Williams did a pretty good job of explaining that increase. And so I would just encourage anybody watching or anybody that's here tonight, if you need further explanation, just go back and listen to that again. Thank you.
Anything else? Which piece do you want? The report? The report.
One pager of the report.
Not the one pager from tonight. Okay. I just wanted to clarify. Yeah. Thank you.
So it never really occurred to me before. This review, how often do we get this review?
So it's every 5 years.
Okay.
It used to be every 3 years, but they extended it to every 5 years. And that's as long as you're in good standing. If you have significant findings, they can do it as much as they want, but we're at every 5 years.
And our cafeterias are they health inspected as well?
Yes.
Okay.
So we're required to have 2 health inspections every year.
Okay.
So
So all of our cafeterias are getting inspected twice per year,
yes.
not just these
Correct. Yes, the
Everyone-
local health department inspects
I thought
twice
so.
a year. Yes.
Thought it'd be good for everybody to hear that.
Yes, thank you.
And how did we land on those schools getting the inspection?
It is based on an assessment. It's a risk assessment for each school. So with our size, and so a risk assessment, that might mean, based on their free and reduced numbers, how many like extra programs they might have.
So it's just
And it's-
coincidence they're all in
it's
the
just
same
a
school
coincidence.
district, and they're all super close to each other, so that
Yes.
was helpful.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, I think that's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Appreciate your time.
Yep.
And all your hard work.
Thank you.
While our next presenter is making her way forward, Ms. Ham, I'll just introduce what this is. Ms. Ham is the chair of our Special Education Advisory Committee, and she's going to present an annual report just for administrative, so everybody knows what this is. The principal responsibility of Special Education Advisory Committee is to advise the school board on various special education issues. They advise the school division on unmet needs in the education of children with disabilities, assist in the formulation and development of plans for improving the performance of children with disabilities, participate in the development of priorities and strategies for meeting the identified needs of children with disabilities, submit periodic reports and recommendations regarding the education of children with disabilities to the superintendent and local school board. The SEAC, as we call it, did I say that right? They also assist the school division in interpreting plans to the community for meeting the needs of special needs of children with disabilities. And they also review the policies and procedures that we have for the provision of special education and related services prior to the submission to the local school board and Virginia Department of Education. And once again, this is Ms. Amber Ham, who is the chair of our local Special Education Advisory Committee. Thank you for being here this evening.
No problem. Good evening, guys. Dr. Shiplet, school board members, Madam Chair, thank you guys for allowing us to present this data of the 2025 annual report. I want to thank a couple people, Megan Spat, Brandon, and Brittany Cash. They helped us compile, and of course their daughter Catherine joined us today. They helped us compile the data and produce this report for you. So in this report and in the presentation, we're going to go over a couple of the highlights because it is a very extensive report. It's 40-some pages long, so we're just trying to give some of the highlights. The first one is the SEAC overview, the state audit and review, student enrollment successes, concerns, educators satisfaction survey, caregiver satisfaction survey, and then of course questions and feedback if you guys have any. So the overview, you did a very good job, thank you. So we don't really have to do that, but basically we are a group of parents, educators, and community members that get together multiple times a year, and we talk about how to improve services for students with disabilities and also what's going well in our school district. You can see some of the leadership that we have. Our next meeting is March 13th. We would love to have school members present. Some of the family events that we've done this year, we kind of expanded out because we want to build community. And so one thing we did, we went to Smiley's Ice Cream December 11th. And then we hope to have a spring event and then do our summer family picnic. This is just to bring community with families and students and educators together. This year, or I guess in 2023, RCPS went through an audit. This audit hadn't been done, I mean, you guys probably heard some of this, but hasn't been done in over probably 10 years. So now they are hoping to do it every 5. And so RCPS, People Services, went through an extensive, data gathering and information so the state could basically see what are some of the concerns that we had. There were 7 non-compliant findings. They did a corrective action plan, but a lot of those were not, were very simple corrections. So So to look at student enrollment, this is kind of important. Currently, right now, there's 1,482 division sped in students enrollment. And so I'm going to get into this a little bit. Enrollment is the students that are enrolled, but there's also another 102 individuals that they don't count as your enrollment, but we still provide services and supervision and services on that. So some of those are the 0 to 4 students, your private day placements, your residentials, your homeschool schoolers, and then your parent-placed private school individuals. So the total number of students that we actually oversee services is 1,584. And so you add the 1,482 and the 102. So one thing to highlight in these numbers, if you look at the elementary school numbers, you see 835. If you actually go to page 6 in your annual report, this is actually comparison. Since we've done the annual report, twice, and we get some numbers, you can actually see the differences in the numbers of what we've been serving last year versus this year. If you want to look, the increase is 132 more students. From last year to this year, we are servicing 132 more students. And so that's pretty significant in the SPED population. Another thing to highlight is when you're looking at the primary disability of students, the ones that we're seeing an increase in is the visual impairments, the autism, other health impairments, speech and language impairments. So those are the numbers that we're actually seeing, the primary disabilities. What's important without the numbers, you have numbers, but you have to actually look at what is the need of the student. And so if you have a student that has multiple, this might be their primary, but they have multiple disabilities, it's not an easy student-child ratio or teacher-child student ratio. You actually have to look at the needs of the students. And so if you have a group of 3 kids, you might need 1 teacher for that group because of the severity of the disabilities. And this is what we are seeing an increase. We're seeing an increase, not only the number of students, but the severity of the disability. And so you have to really look, it's not all about necessarily numbers, it's also about the need of each student. Because the need of 1 student, it could be different than the need of 5 students. It could be greater. For example, if you have a child that has PICA, which is basically a disability where they take items that are not edible and they put them in the mouth, that is a high risk, and they need more supervision than another student. Successes heard by SEAC. So these are the things that we've heard in meetings. We'll go through the survey in a little bit, but these are the highlights that we've heard in the meetings time after time. Exceptional educators and case managers. So in any of this data that you see, we are not saying that there's not exceptional educators. We're actually saying the opposite. We have some wonderful educators, and we just need to provide the support they need so that they can provide the support that the students need. Parents appreciate educators. The pre-referral intervention program has been a success. MANT training, the increase in MANT training, positive connections between teachers and students with disabilities. The SEAC awareness has increased, RCPS supporting SEAC, student family events. And when I say student family events, if you guys haven't been to a unified basketball game, it is amazing. The Young Life Component Prom, the agency fair that was just held last week. It's a great resource for parents. And then the transitional field day fair that is usually held at Spotswood High School. It's a division-wide, and it's where students can actually do track and field events that they normally have the opportunity to do. So, and then specialized programs being implemented. These can be your autism programs, your RAMP programs at Spotswood, the 3-year, and then there's also a 3-year special education roadmap that has started to be created. You also have the 4-year pre-K classroom inclusion with the least restrictive environment. So these are some of the successes that we're hearing in SEAC. This is very, very small, and I'm not going to sit here and read this. You guys can see in your annual report, but I do want to highlight some of those concerns that you're not going to see and hear later on in the evening when I go over the surveys. One of the things is increased communication between parents and educators. Sometimes there are students that are nonverbal, and the parents don't know exactly what's going on. District-wide, this isn't implemented. Some teachers are amazing with it in communicating, and then some don't get a lot of communication. So their parents don't know what's happening with some of the students. The other one is a multiple disability program needs to return back to the middle school. This is basically, we have one for elementary, we have one, but they were combined. So you have 7th graders in elementary schools. They need to be educated with their same age peers. And so that's something that is a concern. Rockingham County has a part-time case manager, which actually reduces the ability for kids with IEPs to access that amazing service and setting. And so if we were able to increase the case manager to a part-time, to a full-time or a full-time and a half, then we could provide more services for those students, and that could be a placement for them more often. Currently, right now, there are teachers and educators that are not having a planning time or a duty-free lunch period. And so they are working through those duty-free lunches, and they are working through their plannings because there's not enough staff to serve the students and meet the IEPs without that. So these are some of those concerns, but they are highlighted. The other one is retaining, what you guys know, retaining and training special education teachers and assistants. That is an ongoing challenge for us as a district. We move on to the educators' satisfaction survey. So this survey was given out in the middle of January. The closing was January 31st. And so this is very recent data. This is not data from a year ago, 6 months ago. This is data from the last couple weeks that's been presented. So there was 134 educators that took the survey, 129 in 2024. And so this, the first graph basically shows, kind of what their service cap is, whether you're, let me go back. So adaptive curriculum is basically students that receive 51% or more. So you're going to hear the word adaptive and you're going to hear the word general curriculum. And so just keep in mind what those actually mean. Adaptive is 51% or more services. General is 50% or less services that students getting per day. What's going well? So strong staff support, collaboration among teachers, effective use of technology, co-teaching models, teachers' impact on students' deadlines and engagement, inclusion in all activities and resource classes. Things that could be improved: additional staff and support, improved support, training for staff, collaboration between special education and general education staff. So a lot of times, they're working to serve the same student, but they don't have the time to talk to each other. Relationship between teachers and students, and one-to-one or small group support. One question was asked: does your school provide adequate and equitable services and support to your students? 35.8% said no. To me, that's pretty alarming. This is basically the same top when we asked them what are the barriers. The barriers are the staffing, lack of support, lack of instructional materials and equipment, and funding. These were the top 4 barriers the last 2 years. So we are still seeing this concern. What is needed to improve services? And this also includes materials and supplies. Basically, you have staff, funding, curriculum materials, professional development, and classroom space. Next, we look at how well do you feel supported? So 50% feel supported and 30% feel unsupported. So if you're looking at the average rating is 6.84. So that's just to give you a general where they feel supported. Are you considering a new job in the next 3 years? This excludes retirement. 23.9% said yes. So I'm going to say that again. Are you considering a new job in the next 3 years, excluding retirement? 23.9% are looking for other employment. This is very comparative to last year. It was 24.8%. Last year's was 24.8%. And if you actually look in the page, you can see your numbers in your annual report. There's going to be gray numbers that were last year, and then the black numbers are for this year. So you can actually directly compare them when you look in the annual report. Some questions that were asked is professional development needed? There was specific training. So this is autism. You need to know which page?
I'm looking, I'm following along.
Let me go to. So the educators, so these are the following questions: professional development needed. And so, and this is to provide services to special needs students. So you have specific training. So we're seeing it, so one is autism. So we're seeing an increase in autism. So that would make sense. Behavior management, differentiated teaching strategies, and assistive technology. Scheduling, collaborating with teachers, the special ed and the general education, additional support for staffing and resources, training, and then student information, backgrounds, like more information on the backgrounds and living situation. How does that impact their education? Best part of the job, students. It is undeniable that our amazing teachers love our students. And so that is why they stay. They love working with them, helping them, seeing them succeed. One person said, seeing the spark in their eyes, seeing them light up when they finally connect and get it. Relationship building and interactions. The other one is their colleagues. These are the top two things why they like their job. The worst part about the job, the students being disrespectful, behavior management, assaults and discipline issues, and workload and curriculum. And the other one is relationships. So parents understanding, lack of support, low pay, communicating to parents, and consistent communication. Day-to-day improvement needs. So this is in day-to-day what could be improved. Scheduling, relationships, staffing, and some of the miscellaneous is classroom supplies, workspace, adequate workspace, and improved technology. The next question we go into, does inclusion as implemented meet the need of the students? You have 64.2% educators say no. In 2024, it was 65.9%. What are the solutions? More staff and support, specialized training and development for staff, reconsider inclusion model, communication and collaboration between teachers, and then behavior management. Have you had a student whose services were not considered due to the lack of staffing, resources, or equipment? Since January 2024, so this is all in the last year. We're not talking about 10 years from now, we're not talking about right now. 29.1% say yes. So students are not getting the services because we have a lack of staffing, supplies, and resources. This is comparable. Last year, so this year, no was 70.9%, last year was 61.2%. Said no. So the yes is 29.1%, and then it was 38.8% last year. So yes. So some people that have taken the survey feel that's gotten a little bit better. Caregiver satisfaction survey. So that completes the highlights of the educators. And now we're asking the caregivers. So again, if you look at the numbers between adaptive and general curriculum, it's pretty even. You know, general curriculum again is 50% or less of services provided. Then you look at the majority of placements, majority is in your public schools versus private day placements, homebound, homeschool, residential facilities, or a private school. Satisfaction survey. So when we ask the parents what is their child's primary disability, this is kind of just giving you, it's just data to say these are the parents that answered these surveys. So you have 31% of the parents that answered the survey, their child's primary diagnosis was autism. That's kind of that information. So what's going well in your school? Great teachers, great leadership, great communication, caring staff, small groups learning, one teacher for core subjects, good behavior support, home-based virtual schooling options, positive experience with communication, adapting curriculum to accommodate students' ability, classroom structure, and positive environment for students. So those are some of the highlights of the caregivers. So does your school provide adequate and equitable services and support to your students? So 78.6% said yes. 21.4% of parents and caregivers said no. The top reasons: staffing, lack of support, funding, and lack of instruction materials and equipment. This was comparable. It was the same top 4 barriers last year. Has your student ever been denied services, or your child pretty much has ever been denied services due to lack of staffing, resources, and equipment? 31% this year said yes. Last year, it was 25.7%. So that has increased. Solutions for improvements: safe person for students, improved classroom settings, behavior viewed as communication, plans to keep students in schools, inclusion with social situations, and teach students instead of providing answers. The next one is playground equipment, equitable and accessible to your students compared to non-disabled peers. 71.4 say yes, 28.6 say no. This is the same numbers from last year. So this has not changed at all. It's the same percentage. Fences for elopement risk, accessible building and playground equipment for wheelchairs, ramps, increased recess opportunities with poor weather, and wheelchair compliance equipment. Am I comfortable, when parents are asked, am I comfortable asking questions and discussing my students' progress and expressing concerns? So 11.9% say no. They feel disconnected with school staff, do not feel heard, overwhelmed, or priorities are not aligned. Caregiver satisfaction survey. So this is how often does your case manager communicate with you? And so 28.6% say quarterly, and then you can see how it falls below. However, this question is basically, so for some parents, you don't only need quarterly. And other students and parents, you're going to need daily. So I think, it's kind of all over the place. But when you received the appropriate amount of communication? So when you ask this question, 35.7% say no. 64.3% say yes. Ideas for improvement: communicate caregivers' tasks, like eating, bathroom, behaviors, incidences that are happening in school. Again, this is for mostly your nonverbal, the ones that aren't able to communicate. If they haven't eaten in school, the parents don't know that they're hungry, and that's maybe why they're having a temper tantrum. So just the consistency of communicating what's happening in the schools. Consistent, frequently, daily, weekly, or monthly communication. And when student is all tracked to meet the goals, letting them know. Caregiver satisfaction survey: how well do you feel supported by your school? 7.6% is the average rating. And this is, have you heard of SEAC? 88.1% say yes. So what do you know about SEAC? They advocate for special needs students, provide communication about services, hold meetings to share valuable data and improve services, a valuable resource for families and students, and unfamiliar were the top responses. But I want to thank RCPS because this year you guys have given us a significant amount of support to communicate with the parents and to fill that gap. So we really appreciate your guys' support in providing magnets that have gone out like in the last week to parents and also supplies to host tables, informational tables. So conclusion, there's a staffing crisis. Inadequate funding, inability to provide student services, lack of support for educators and caregivers, and need more training and professional development. Again, that's kind of a double-edged sword, because some people want training and some people don't want the training, and there's some people that need it. This one with the training, I will say, the state of Virginia as a whole in higher education, they don't have a lot of classes. Unless you're a special education teacher, you don't get a lot of classes on how to deal with different disabilities. And so that actually goes to the district to educate those individuals, because historically they get 1, maybe 2 classes in their whole degree. The next one is increased communication and collaboration. So recommendations that we have is increased funding for special ed, prioritize professional development and training for those that want and need it, improve communication and collaboration, address staffing shortage, enhance supports for students with severe disabilities, and that is your adaptive students, improve inclusion practices, and enhance accessibility. So I would like to open it up for questions or feedback.
Thank you, Mrs. Ham, for all of that information, for putting it together, for all that you do. Board members, are there any questions for her at this time?
Yes, I got a few questions. One, I seen your survey, only 42 people out of 1,482 were surveyed. What's the reason for that? Was it just not responses, and where'd the 42 come from?
So they were sent out to every parent that receives an IEP 504. And so it was the parent or the educators, and both, that had the opportunity to provide that information. So we don't pinpoint, it's a survey that's sent out to all parents.
I just wonder how we could do a better job of getting more feedback from that, because the survey with only 42 answering, just to me, just isn't adequate enough of what we're really facing. And then another question I have for Dr. Shiflett is, your findings of the SEAC is how you say it?
SEAC. Yep.
The finding was that it revealed that special education in Rockingham County is facing a staffing crisis. Would you agree with that, Dr. Shiflett? Is that something that we're facing?
So I guess it depends on how you define crisis, but it has always been difficult to hire special education teachers, right? If you go to any college or university that offers that program, it's usually the least number of students enrolled. So that's always been an issue. In the last 5 years, it's been a greater issue, finding highly qualified teachers to teach special education. So we have a number of those folks who have a provisional license and working towards that degree. But I would say in general, there's a teacher crisis, teaching shortage crisis across the board, right? We still have some openings, even in this current year. If we could find the teachers, we would put them in those places. So I definitely think there's a shortage. I think, as Mrs. Ham indicated, we have a lot of really great teachers, but some of them are inexperienced. And I think, that's some of that reference to training and professional development, and what does it take for them to be more successful. It boils down to budget, right? Budgeting for, hiring and training. I know there's some requests from the special ed department to actually hire 2 coaches to work with our inexperienced young teachers in special ed and help them. One maybe to do, the general curriculum teachers, one to work with adaptive. And we're trying to address some of those, right, in the budget process. We've talked about some changes even to pay scales for adaptive teachers versus general curriculum teachers. And so a lot of conversations around this, and Mr. Bryant and his staff have put together a really nice 3-year roadmap and what they can do in the next 3 years to make improvements. But to answer your question, crisis, yeah, probably I would say so, right? Finding the teachers who are highly qualified to meet the needs of our students is challenging for sure, for certain.
Now, is that tied to inadequate funding for special needs, or you just said that it was not finding the right people, or is that not finding enough money for special ed.
I think it's a combination of both. I don't think there, in the job market itself, there's an abundance of special education teachers. And so I think that's a part of it, which is maybe bigger than just Rockingham County, but I also think funding to hire additional teachers and try to, get case size down. And here's the other interesting dilemma, right? So we're talking about a survey for 25 schools, right? From, Folks Run at 200 and Cub Run at 600, and right. So there's this variance. Some of our schools, the caseloads are very reasonable, maybe even more so, right? But in other schools, they're not. And so trying to balance all of that. So it does come down to funding. So if we have more money to hire more teachers, yes, let's do it. But I cannot promise you that
There'll be teachers.
there'll be teachers there, right?
Another finding that the SEAC found was, or concerns that Ms. Ham talked about, was returning middle school students to the middle school. So what kind of funding would that look like if we returned middle school students to the middle school?
Currently, that's in our budget too. And that, so two years ago, I believe, is that right, Mr. Bryant? We had a program at Montevideo Middle School. We basically sent some of the students to Spotswood, and we kept some of the students at the elementary school. Our plan in this upcoming budget is to bring that program back to Montevideo Middle School. Anything else you'd like to add, Mr. Bryant?
Disabilities with their age appropriate, not disabled. And we felt like facility-wise, we didn't have.
Let me interrupt you real quick. Can you come talk into the microphone so that this gets recorded? Please and thank you.
Good evening. So we want our students with disabilities with their non-disabled peers throughout a school day. And that's always been the case in elementary, middle, and high. 2 years ago, we had some challenges with the facilities and the grouping of students that were in the middle school. And the previous director felt it would be appropriate to avoid those struggles, those challenges that the families were feeling with the middle school. We went ahead and went with a K through 7 elementary model. Got permission from the state. You have to go through the state and get kind of an override for that permission. And then the 8th through 21st birthday was at Spotswood at the high school. It's worked fine, but kids who are 11, 12, 13 deserve to be with their non-disabled peers. Mm-hmm. So that's something that Ms. Ham's aware of, and a lot of our families. So we're committed to getting the middle school program back for our significant disabilities.
Ms. Brown, what's a way that you may know of that we could get the numbers up for, to be able to get a better survey than 42 out of the 1482? Have you done any surveys with our parents with issues, and what's been your response as well?
Again, we have the parent group email list. We always send out anything coming up. There's a special education flyer that goes out monthly. It's called the Spotlight. Seems we get a lot of feedback from that. Sarah Foley's in our office. Sarah's in charge of all of our 14 to 21-year-olds programming, and typically get pretty good feedback from the newsletter, the Spotlight.
Okay.
So I would encourage SEAC to maybe connect with Sarah.
Okay.
And make sure we're advertising things going on in the Spotlight.
Okay.
A lot of folks still aren't doing the electronic technology review of information. They're still looking at that tangible flyer or newsletter.
Okay. All right.
The other thing I would say with the shortage, I just want to address, Dr. Shiflett shared pretty much right on spot on. But a couple of years ago, we were at a retreat for our administrative training, and we all agreed there's a shortage nationally. And he made a comment. He said, we're hiring the best of what we have, the best of the best. It's our responsibility to train them up. So we can't worry so much about the pool and what we have available. We have to be prepared to hire folks we think are going to be good for kids and provide the education, the training they need to do the job, K through 21 years old. And I feel like we can do that. It didn't help that 2 of our local universities have dropped their special ed programs. So JMU is the sole provider. They had to make their decisions as well. But we have less local preparatory programs. So I feel like we're doing well. We've got some grow your own programs going to get some of our instructional assistants trained to become licensed special educators. And PD is like top priority right now.
Okay. Ms. Hurst, I would like to ask the board if we could get Mr. Bryant on a school board meeting, upcoming one, to be able to talk about his needs that he may have and maybe his needs for special ed for the upcoming budget.
I'd appreciate the opportunity.
We can do that, and maybe you'd like to bring your 3-year roadmap.
3-year roadmap, and maybe just go ahead and share the annual special ed plan.
Let's go.
Okay, we'll do it all.
Yeah,
And all
I
in one.
think our heart is to get our students what they need.
Yep.
And the information that Ms. Ham has provided tonight is helpful in that endeavor. We've got to know where the gaps are and what the needs are to move forward so we can advocate, especially for funding.
Yeah.
It's that time.
I do have a
It takes
question.
money to make these things happen.
Sure does.
Do you, either of you feel do you think special education has the highest turnover rate? Because I'm looking at this 23.9% saying that they're considering a new job in the next 3 years. And it's similar to 2024. It's 32 educators last year and 32 this year. So my question is, do we have a higher turnover rate, or maybe these are the same people?
We have 21 new special educators this year.
Okay.
They do have mentors.
Okay.
They have lots of built-in supports for an early career teacher to make sure they understand how to write an IEP, meet deadlines, work with a veteran teacher. It'll be another 21 next year. It's turnover. We have 150 special ed teachers and 200 plus paraprofessionals. So I can anticipate each year that kind of number for different reasons.
I watch the report from HR every board meeting pretty closely, and it feels like SPED seems to have our highest turnover. Is that correct, Dr. Painter? Do you have something you want to add?
I'll note that it's not people. A lot of our teachers are trying to get their foot in the door in Rockingham, and they're not necessarily endorsed. And so a lot of our spec crisis is because they don't have the SPED and correct endorsement for either general or adaptive curriculum.
Yeah.
And so instead of taking the extra classes, they try to move to a position that they already have their licensure in. So we're not necessarily teaching teachers to other places because they're moving into what they have their license. I will say that I do appreciate that JMU now has that endorsement.
Yeah.
We did just have a very room meeting for next fall's new applicants for our paras that are interested in getting their license. So far, the applications I have are.
I would say we've gone on the offensive to pursue qualified folks in adapted level. It can be a high burnout rate. If you're going to care for the whole child and the needs of the child, then, adapted does. So I've seen HR work with family or teachers who are burned out in an adaptive curriculum. They want a different change. So I've seen folks move into general curriculum. I've seen them move out of that higher intensity SPED program and try to move into something that's a little less intense. So there's some movement within the department too. But they're considered new teachers because it's a new piece of special ed. So it may not be all exiting the division. It might be changing levels. Thank you.
I have a
Yes.
couple more questions
Yes, ma'am.
for Ms. Ham. Let's see. It says here, lack of support for educators and caregivers. That lack of support for educators, SPED educators or educators in general? I basically had a conversation recently with a gen ed teacher that didn't know what to do with the IEP. Is that a common thing? I feel like that's probably a common thing, right, Ms. Horst? So does this mean SPED educators or gen ed teachers?
So the question is to both. So this is data for both groups. However, I think you have general educators that sometimes don't understand the IEPs, or they don't understand the looking at a glance, which is a abbreviated IEP that is given to all the teachers. And so sometimes I think it goes back to training and goes back to maybe, and a lot of the comments, if you looked at the DDL comments, there was, I want, like general education teachers, I want the students included. I just don't have the staffing, like, because an assistant needs to come in. I don't have the staffing. I don't have the knowledge. I don't have the resources. And so I think when you look at the inclusion and you look at like some of the written in comments, the general educators are even overwhelmed, because what happens if you don't have enough assistants or enough special education teachers, then that falls on the backs of your general education. And so they get burned out. And so, and if they're working on, sometimes I think a teacher is in a classroom and they have to decide, who am I going to educate? So then you have a thing, if you're not giving enough educators and assistants to meet the needs for your SPED classes to do the inclusion well, then the general education teachers are deciding or have to decide what students or what student and I'm going to serve today. And so then it kind of waters down the whole system. It's not only affecting your SPED students, but it's also affecting your general education. So I think it's a lacking of staffing in both areas. But I think if you take the need of the special education teachers, assistants, things like that, and you put them in the general education classrooms, then you're also going to be supporting your general education teachers. And so it's a win-win, and it's a win-win for all students. I'm not talking about special education, I'm talking about all students, because then you're having supervision, you're having small groups, you're having pull aside, for that SPED assistant or for the SPED, the SPED teacher to do that while they're in the classroom with their non-disabled peers, which is by law, you're supposed to be in the least restrictive environment. And so by law, that's where they should be. But I think when you look back at the data, when it says, why do we not have equitable services? Because of resources and staffing. Or why are we not serving, students, with IEPs? Because it's the staffing. So I think we're just overloaded. There's a lot of paperwork. There's a lot of needs. One thing, if you look at the assistant, the base scale of an assistant is under $21,000. So we need qualified, they need to be educated, but at the same time, they could go to a fast food restaurant and make just as much money. And so if we look at the pay scale, and this is actually the last 2 surveys that we had the last 2 years, even the teachers are saying our assistants need to be paid better, because you're asking someone base pay of $21,000 or less, to come in and be with the students and be trained and learn that's a higher skill level than a fast food restaurant. And so we need to, that could be a cause of the turnover. So I do have, and if there's other questions, I do have one more thing after your questions, but go ahead.
It's interesting. This is going to dovetail nicely into my committee report, because I had a regional SPED committee today, and we talked about interpreters, and I see here it says need or more interpreters. Can you expand on that?
So
Or do you know what that comment even means?
So interpreters, so it's the same thing. I mean, even in general education classroom, you might also see it. But if you have interpreters, it's hard to communicate. So whether it's, a different language or it's sign language, if you don't have interpreters, it takes a significant amount of time to even communicate what you're trying to teach them if there's that language barrier. So I would assume that is the interpreters.
Yeah, I mean, we
because,
specifically talked about sign language interpreters, but this could mean more
yes,
English
we have
interpreters.
multiple languages in Rockingham County, and we don't have the general education teachers, or the regular teachers don't carry multiple languages. Not all of them have that. And so I think anytime a student is in a classroom that needs an alternative language, whether it's sign language or something else, that decreases their education, because the communication. I mean, I personally have seen teachers, they get out their phones and they're like, and they ask a question, so if we had an interpreter to increase that, not only would they have more time to spend with the other students, but they would have, the communication would be better for the student and the teacher.
And my final question, I think we had some help putting the survey together, and I think we have a special helper with our helpers
so.
today. Can you please introduce her?
Sure. This is Miss Catherine Cash. Would you like Brittany? Would you like to introduce her?
However, unfortunately, I won't be here.
Thank you very much. That's all I have.
I wasn't quite done. I just have two questions, sorry.
Go ahead.
In this speech, you list off like specific learning disabilities is 376, speech/language impairment, other health impairments, autism, developmental delay, intellectual disabilities, multiple disabilities, emotional disturbances, with 53 kids there, hearing impairments, 7, visual impairment, 13, orthopedic impairments, traumatic brain injury, 3, and deaf blindness, 1. So in this speech/language impairment, and maybe Chris may know this as well, you have 342 or 300. But are there ESL students in that number?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, there's some dually identified students, which means.
that number's higher, right?
Yes, language learner.
Okay,
And also the speech could be a secondary or a related service.
okay,
So you might be a little inflated there in the number.
okay,
Because if you've got a learning disability or other health impairment in speech in the secondary, it's going to make the number look like they're big in both categories.
okay.
That makes
Okay,
sense.
it does, yeah, it makes sense. Thanks for a clarification there. And my last question was this, because in your survey where it says, what is the worst part of your job? And one of the things the teacher said, it was assaults by students and lack of support from staff in these situations. My question, I guess, for SEAC, and I wish you would have turned around first, so the back of it's got Ebonics, so I can say, that's great, I love that, SEAC, I can say it. My question for SEAC would be, what would be your recommendation for students that we see that, because this is something that bothers me as well, especially at the elementary school, where you have students that they have a lot, and whether it's the emotional disturbance or whatever, but there's a lot of assaults where it causes teachers not to want to come back to work for us. And also it causes the kids in the classroom to be worried about coming to school. And I'm not saying, 2 or 3, 5 or 10, 15 or 20 assaults that take place, but I'm talking more like 50, 60 from one student in a classroom. So what would be SEAC's recommendation of what should we do with children, students like that have a continual outbursts and assaults in the classroom that were causing kids to be afraid to come to school, and then also causing teachers not to want to come to work? I know it's a tough question, but I mean, it's a reality that we're faced with as a board of what do we do? Because we want our classrooms to be safe. We want our kids to be wanting to come to school, and we don't want to lose those teachers that feel like they're not supported. So what's a recommendation from SEAC or something that you could offer for the board tonight in this situation?
So I can offer, it's hard for me to speak, because I speak on behalf of SEAC.
Mhm.
And so that is not something we have
Well, as a
specifically
parent,
talked
yes.
about. And so I can talk about with personal experience
Okay.
and maybe things that I've heard, but it's very hard for me to say SEAC is recommending
Okay.
that. So is that
Yes, ma'am.
okay? Is that,
That's
you want me
fine.
to continue?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, do you have something to say?
You want to come up so we can hear? Thank you.
I have been a past educator here in the county, taught kindergarten. And I think one of the things that really could help with that is the funding and the extra help and support and staff. We call it like a crisis, like hill. And if you can start to see that your student is starting to reach up towards that crisis hill and you can intervene, it's noted that you can keep them from hitting that crisis level, and you can avoid that meltdown or issue that's going to arise. So one of the things I would say is that extra staffing definitely could help. because you could notice that so-and-so is getting, irritated, or you could recognize, oh, you're not liking that. Let's go for a walk, or let's get some water, and that will de-escalate that a little bit. But
What are your thoughts on students so that have that extra staffing, that they have more than one teacher that's helping one student out, and they're still assaulting kids in the classroom and teachers? What's the next step? What do you recommend?
Again, I can't speak for everyone to like Amber was saying, because I'm only one person. But being able to also have that administrative support. There were times, I think, in the past where I've heard people make, just comments or like, oh, I really could have used just another body who knew what to do in this situation. And you will do provide the MANT training, which is appropriate training as well. Thank you, Chris, for doing that. So just having more people be present in those moments to help us, take other students other places if it's not a safe place at that time, really makes a difference too.
Thank you.
But again, I'm only one, not many. So.
Yeah, I guess my question is, when you have a kid that has all the extra help, like they have at least 2 full-time teachers that are helping out a child, and they have the help and support there, and it continues to happen, what do you think what should be a standard of the board of how many times should a student be able to assault another student or assault a teacher, and what should we do?
So I think that's an IEP decision. I think you have to look at the data. You have to look at the support. You have to look at it as an IEP team, which is composed of the parents and the educators. There's certain situations where sometimes you can add additional staff. Sometimes you can add certain equipment, sensory equipment to help swings, things like that. There are some times, I've seen at one point there was 10 or 15 years ago, there was 2 emotionally disturbed specialized programs. One was at Cover Run, for students, that there was a case manager specifically designed and to help with those students and trained. Then there's also alternative placements. And so there are alternative placements, where you actually, you might have a smaller group at first in the public school, and you transition them in 5 minutes at a time, 10 minutes at a time. You work for those times. But there's also things like behavior intervention plans. It's called BIP. And so if an IEP team feels that there are behaviors, you can have ask for a BIP, which is a behavior intervention plan. What that does, you have a behavior analyst go in, they talk to the teachers, and they design a specific, scientific kind of based, hey, why is it happening? Where is it happening? How frequently is it happening? So I think there's things that you also have to look at was a BIP implemented, and what resources. And if not, and all those things have been done, then there is alternative placements. I mean, there are private day placements in Verona, Stanton, Charlottesville, Lynch, Edinburgh, so there are placements where you can have a student go. If you have exhausted things in the least restrictive environment in the public school, then there are alternatives. But there are things like BIPs and behavior programs that sometimes aren't implemented or parents don't know about. And that's also a lack of staffing sometimes. You don't have the behavior individuals and analysts to go in and do that.
May I say one more thing?
Yeah.
And then I'm going to excuse
Thank you,
myself.
Ms. Hand. Thank you for.
If with your all's permission, I'd like to come present kind of a state of the RCPS union special education program.
I love that.
State of the
Yeah, that's a great
Union.
idea.
And just kind of give you where year one for me as a director, and of course, it's not my first year in the department,
Yeah.
but I think I could shed some light on some of the survey data that will help everybody here, and then maybe do the annual special ed request
be great.
proposal.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Do all of our educators do the MANT training, or is it just special ed?
Big thank you to executive and the leadership team. We're spreading MANT training like wildfire.
Okay.
It's pretty significant right now.
I'll
And
advocate for that big time. I took it I'm a former classroom teacher, took MANT training, totally changed how I ran classroom management with and without students with disabilities.
Yep.
Because a lot of it, I think of the 2-day training, I don't know if it's still 2 days, but one of the days was just on the emotional work.
Yeah.
And that's the piece that our kids need. And that's what, I forget your name, I'm so sorry. Yeah, that's what Brittany was sharing was you watch students escalate. And if you have the tools and the resources that you need as a teacher to help them de-escalate before they just start hitting kids or harming others, themselves, teachers, if you can get to them and de-escalate it beforehand, that's a great tool. I will say, just thank you to all of the information that you presented tonight. There, for general education teachers, I think we usually take one class in college, like one class. And so we do our best, but we are not fully prepared for what our students with special needs have. And that's where the collaboration between special education teachers and general education teachers is really important, but also staffing. And so I'll put my plug in for tonight that we need to be investing more in this department for our students. It's what they deserve.
Thanks.
So thank you all for being here tonight. I want to send one more plug towards SEAC. I have a student, one of my own, so I'll put my mom hat on here. I do have a student or a child with an IEP, and I just want the community to know what an incredible resource the special education advisory team is. I have called Ms. Ham parent to parent asking for advice, and she's incredible. And it's a great resource for parents. Being in education, I know enough to be dangerous when it comes to advocating for my child, but I needed some, sometimes in the past I've needed some help or some encouragement or just some ideas of things to look for. And I want to encourage parents and community members, if you have a child with special needs, SEAC is an incredible resource in our community. So make sure you read those emails. Thank you for being here tonight. I appreciate it.
And I have a gift for you guys. Brittany's gonna get the gift. And I just want to explain what the gifts are. So we talk about doing education well. And so, there's a saying, when you have lemons, make lemonade. And so I just want to give an analogy of everything that we have talked about today. In your bag, there is a jar. And this jar is the classroom, that teachers are responsible for, whether it's general education or whether it's sped education. And then you have the teachers. They are great, they're experienced, they love their kids. So, and then what else do you need? You need sugar. And so the sugar represents the resources that you have. If you have, as you're filling up your classroom and you're providing the needs that you have, if you're only given so much sugar, and if you're only given a lemon, you can only serve so many students. But what's happening is you're taking all those resources and you're taking your recipe, on how to educate a student well. And you're mixing all these up, what you have, but then you're pouring more water in the glass after you do that. And what happens to the lemonade? You don't make lemonade. You water it down, and you water down the service, you water down the education that you're providing to the students. And so this is just an analogy. If we don't have enough teachers to make the lemonade and provide the support in the classroom, and we don't have the classroom supplies, to make it sweet and do what you need to do, then what's going to happen is the education of all those students in that classroom is going to be watered down. So I just like to leave that with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ham. On that same note, we have committee reports tonight. And I think we just have one from Ms. Laura. She is our representative on the regional. I'll let you tell us what the official
Special
name is.
Education Regional Committee.
Yes.
And I was digging through my bag to find the sugar because I was going to hold it up and be like, and it's budget season, and I like my lemonade sweet. The more sugar you put in that lemonade, the better it is. So, hey, Justin, minibuses, sped money, teachers raises, we want all the things. So, so help. Thank you for that. But yes, we had our regional committee meeting today, and interestingly enough, I think we started by talking about interpreters and how many sign language interpreters we needed. And we're going to get, I think we're going up for the region from 2 to 3 floating positions. So hopefully we'll have some more available. It's also, it's really hard to sign all day long for a student. So we're trying to get a little bit of help there. We passed a budget. We discussed MANT training and whether we wanted to go with MANT training or a different type of training. I can't remember the name of it, but we advocated for keeping with MANT training. And then we also discussed, or we had a presentation by the Edinburgh School, which is one of those places that it's a day placement. And if you have a difficult situation, you can move the student to that kind of training. And we're looking at potentially making the Edinburgh School available more south. So it would be available to Stanton, Augusta, Rockingham. Because like I'm northern Rockingham, and it takes me about 30 minutes to get to Edinburgh. And it also takes me about 30 minutes to get to Weir's Cave, which is the other side of Rockingham. So it would be nice for us to have that program more in our backyard. And I advocated with those folks. They said, oh, Waynesboro would be a good place. And I said, oh, you know what? Harrisonburg would be a great place because they wanted to tap into teachers and being able to work with the universities. And I'm like, hey, if you want universities, Harrisonburg, Rockingham is the place to be. So we'll see how that shakes out. But those were just some of the things we're looking at. So thank you to Chair Hurst for letting me have that assignment. So, and that's what and I want to thank Justin Moyers, Dr. Shiflett, and Chris Brandt for being at the meeting with me today. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Laura. Dr. Shiflett will move into superintendent comments.
Ms. Hurst, before you move on, do you have an update on the committee?
We talked about that at the last meeting, and then we met with our attorney and we're looking into a couple of things. We can give you an update on that.
Be great.
Thanks.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Chair Hurst. Just a few quick updates. Probably many of you saw my announcements that next Monday and Tuesday will now be school days instead of professional development, which we heard earlier that we need. Maybe I'm second guessing my decision, but we're not in school tomorrow. It's calling for 4 to 8 inches of snow is the last report I looked at before I came into this meeting. So we'll probably miss another few days, and it's going to be 55 on Thursday. I'm thankful for that. So maybe we can get back in school before the weekends. That's my goal. That's my plan. But we're just trying to get through winter. Also, just want to, you heard we talked about budget. So Justin presented, what we may anticipate from the state. Previous meeting, he talked about all the requests that, that has been made from all the departments and schools. And now we're working with our board members to try to figure out what are we going to ask for from our local county board of supervisors and trying to meet the needs. And the needs are great, and there's no denying that. And so we want to, we're taking a really hard look at within our own budgets and what can we do to, be good stewards, but also we know that we need to be able to hire more teachers, more assistants, so on. And then finally, I want to say on Saturday, I had an opportunity to go to the new Rockingham Recreational Center, which is there at Crossroads near the park. And they dedicated the track to Mr. Ed Long, who is a life member of Rockingham County, has done really just tremendous things for our community. And we hosted our first indoor track meet at that recreational facility on Saturday, and it was awesome to see our kids competing and knowing that when it was over, they hopped on a bus and within 25 minutes they were back at school. And the last time I went to see an indoor track meet, it was a 2-hour drive after it was finished. So really proud of Rockingham County Board of Supervisors for providing that, not just for Rockingham County schools, but for the entire community. It is a beautiful space. If you haven't seen it, please be sure to get out there and take a look at it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shiflett. To wrap things up tonight, we'll go into school board highlights, questions, and comments. Ms. Cave, would you like to start us off this evening?
I feel like I went first last time.
Did you?
So I wasn't
I just
expecting
go left
you.
or go right?
No, it's fine. I wasn't expecting it. I just got two things quickly. I was invited last week, I guess, to speak to a group of Cub Scouts as a locally elected official. And I love those opportunities. And this was outside of the school, but it was mainly our District 5, District 3, maybe 2 kids. And they were just fun to be with, and always enjoy those opportunities to pour into kids and sort of tell them about what we do and just, talk about some of our core values and, those things that motivate us to, make good decisions for the board and all that. So that's probably my favorite part of doing this job is just, and I don't view it as a job, but it's getting those opportunities to work with kids. So I just wanted to shout out to Mr. Zool, the Cub Scout leader, that particular troop. Thank you for asking me to do that. And Dr. Shiflett, along the lines of the weather, thank you for making the decision early tonight. I think actually it might have been at that Cub Scout meeting. I had a parent ask me, why, and we've done it like this forever. And actually, I mean, I'm glad that we do, but just, it is a question that we've been asked multiple times. On the east end of the county, like we were pretty clear, Singers Glen was trashed with ice. And this parent asked, well, why don't some schools go and some schools don't? And I know you give a really great answer for that. We've talked about it before, but I don't know if it was in public. And I think some of it had to do with, school ending dates, and this school would have this many days in, this wouldn't, and it just gets kind of chaotic. But could you speak to that just briefly?
I'd be happy to. So as a division, we have to meet the 990 hours of instructional time. So that's first and foremost. I'm always watching that. But the question I think you're asking is why couldn't, let's say this, was it last Thursday? I can't remember, last Wednesday, when we had the ice and the down trees and so forth. Why couldn't the eastern side of the county go to school and maybe the western side or north, south, not go? So there's a couple of problems with that. One, we also maybe have people who live on that side of the county but teach on the eastern side. So let's say if someone lived in Mrs. Burgoyne's neck of the woods, which I understand from several phone calls that morning, that things were really bad out that way. So if you live there, you would have to get, let's say, to the east side. So that's one problem. But then the other thing is we have folks who teach sometimes in several schools. So they're, maybe they work part of their day maybe they teach on elementary school. Let's take it on maybe on an elementary day 1 specials. They're at Linville Edom, but on elementary day 2, they're at a different school. So it really gets then tricky with trying to keep our contracts sort of the same. People get a little bit disgruntled when 12-month employees have to work and other folks do not work. That's a bit of a source of contention sometimes. So, right, sure it is. But it's, so we just open and close pretty much as a division, right? That's kind of how it plays out. Occasionally, there will be a situation, thank you, where we may send kids home from a particular school early because of lack of electricity or water or something like that. And then the other one that Mrs. Laura reminded me of is MTC. So if we're opening, MTC serves all 4 high schools, and so we would have to make that arrangements. And again, Rockingham County is very large geographically, and it makes it difficult. You're exactly right. The eastern side of the county was really in good shape Thursday last week, but other parts they were not. So it's a decision that comes with the territory I have to make. I realize that I make no one happy when I make the decisions, right? Either people are upset because they have to find childcare, or someone's upset because, they wanted the day off. And I just make the best decision I can with the information I'm provided. And safety is always number one. And then understand I do not like counseling school. So that's inside my head right there.
Thank you, Dr.
That's all I have.
Ms. Laura.
Thank you. I've sprinkled a lot of my highlights in through the night, but let me do two more. One, I had a meeting planning the Heritage Dinner, and I can't remember off the top of my head when the Heritage Dinner is, but that's the April 10th. Thank you, Dr. Shiflett. That benefits FFA departments throughout the county through RCPS. And April 10th will be that dinner, and tickets are on sale now. And then also I had a Rock the Ridge meeting, and that is a benefit for MTC students for the foundation there. And that is going to be August 2nd. And it's going to have some tribute bands if you like hard rock, I think it is, AC/DC kind of stuff. That will be August 2nd. So I want to put in plugs for those two things. Start looking for your tickets now. And then I also would like to put in a plug that we go to school on Valentine's Day, because I know lots of kiddos have Valentine's that they're working on, and they've worked really hard. And I personally have a date with a hog butchering at Broadway High School, because what better way to celebrate Valentine's Day than with hog butchering? Love RCPS. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Mr. Cross.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Hurst. If you've never been to a hog eating barbecue and FFA puts on at one of the high schools, you should go to it. It's a lot of fun and it tastes really good. First of all, I want to apologize for not being able to make the last meeting. I was on my way from Charlottesville, and I got sick a few times. I didn't want to share my sickness with y'all, so I thought I'd stay home, and I don't like wearing a mask, so I wasn't going to wear a mask and come in. So, but I apologize for missing that. I haven't missed many meetings over the past 3 years due to sickness. So, I just wanted to say I apologize for that. I also attended the dedication to the new rec center out on Spotswood Trail, and it's such an amazing place. If you hadn't had a chance to go to and see that, and I'm so thankful. There couldn't have been a better man that they dedicated the building to than Mr. Long. Edward S. Long Jr. Is his name, and all his accomplishments and all that he's done in our community over his life, his service in the military. Dick Myers went over all of his accomplishments in the military and being a military pilot in the Air Force, which was really cool. All the airplanes, I think he flew 7 planes altogether, and he named all those planes, which my son was very interested in that. And Billy Kiger spoke at the meeting as well. He is a retired school teacher from TA, and also just got off the Board of Supervisors, hung that hat up, and he was one of the board members that was very influential in getting the rec center in the first place. And he did such a great job. And he talked that day that it was actually Joe Shoker that I put Mr. Long's name up that they should dedicate the building to. And so I thought that was really neat that day. And his service, Bob Fales, I don't know if you remember Bob Fales. He's a retired teacher at Spotswood High School, Bob and Linda, but Bob spoke, and Bob spoke about serving with Mr. Long for many, many years at Mill Creek Church of the Brethren. I was going to say Mount Olive, but it's Mill Creek Church of the Brethren right there on Port Road. And one of the things that Bob Fales said was that it was Mr. Long that always during Sunday morning services would make the kids, the youth, feel so special, whether he would talk about how the accomplishments they had done in school or the community or work. But Bob would say it in such a way, or Mr. Long would say it in such a way that the kids thought they were actually getting a award during the service. So anyway, they can't say enough of Mr. Long. One of his sons is Chip Long. I don't know if you remember him. He retired from RCPS. He was a school teacher at Montevideo Middle School for many, many years. And Chip's an amazing person that does a lot. If you've been to Spotswood High School, like his dad is on the mic up on football games on Friday Night Lights at Spotswood High School. So not only that, but Mr. Long has a grandson teaching at Montevideo. So I thought that was pretty neat as well. I didn't know that connection there at Saturday, but they're very neat to go there and see Mr. Long get dedicated, the name there. And then for the kids in the community, not, as Mr. Shoker said, not only the kids in our community are going to benefit from the rec center, but it's going to be kids from the state of Virginia, and that's going to benefit from the rec center as well. So just a job well done. I want to give a shout out to Kirby Dean, the head of the rec department, who really pushed to see this through as well. And he spoke on Saturday, and that guy is such an amazing person. I love Kirby Dean. My second shout out tonight, Steve Reed. I just want to say, Steve, thank you so much. I can't echo enough just how much we appreciate you here in Rockingham County, here in Rockingham County Public Schools. All that you do, all that you've done throughout the years, the amount of time that you put in that no one sees, and everything you do behind the scenes. Thank you so much. I, as a board member, really appreciate you, and thank you so much for all the work that you put in here in school. So with that being said, thank you also to the maintenance, full maintenance department, and our custodial staff and our principals that's going to go out and clean parking lots and driveways. And I mean, not driveways, but maybe some driveways, but sidewalks and things like that with the snow coming in. I know the kids are really excited, but our custodial staff and our maintenance staff will be out there plowing the parking lots and getting the sidewalks ready as well. And with that, I think I'm done. Thank you.
Ms. Burgoyne?
I feel like I was being dramatic, Dr. Shiflett, but I was not, okay? So for my district in Singers Glen, specifically in Linville, we got horrendous weather. And I had two of my girlfriends, one in Grottoes and one in Bridgewater, call me like, we just got some rain. And I said, well, wait. So I rapid fire sent even Miss Hurst here. I called her and I said, oh my gosh, how are you even going to this meeting? And so I sent her photos and she was like, oh my gosh. And then another, she was like, holy cow. Like it was horrible. My husband spent the weekend getting trees off of our roof. Thankfully, I don't think there's any damage, but lots of people in my area did not fare as well. And I ran into one of the girls I coached cheerleading for, her grandmother today, and her great grandmother's house was completely collapsed. So there are a lot of people in District 2 whose homes are in bad shape, and my vehicle is out of commission for about 3 more weeks because it doesn't have a back window and the roof ended up with a whole tree on it. So I'm thankful that, everybody was safe and everything, but there are a lot of people who did not fare as well. And so we ended up at we had no power. I know lots of people are without power for about 2 days. And so we ended up at the rescue squad that evening. And there were a lot of people from, staff members from our schools and students from our schools that came there. And the rescue squad did a dinner for everybody. And it was like when you go to your mom's house and she makes all the leftovers. There were hot dogs and pancakes and spaghetti, and it was like the best comfort food. So I felt like I was at my mom's house, and she was like, well, I'll just make everything. But it was really nice to see the community coming together, even though it just felt like such a small part of our community in my district. So yeah, if you have a chainsaw and want to help clean up, just drive through any street in Singers Glen, and there's plenty of trees to cut down. So, Dr. Shiflett, we've got about 50 in our yard that could be cut up. But so one of my highlights is Mrs. Hurst and I got to visit East Rock and Riverbend, and we had such an awesome time just touring the schools and hanging out. And it felt less like formal and more just kind of like hanging out with the staff. So I had a really good time, and that was definitely one of my highlights. It's February in Virginia is School Board Appreciation Month, so I do want to say thank you to everybody on this board who puts up with me, and Dr. Shiflett for my frantic phone calls at 7 a.m. And thank you, Mrs. Ham, for all of that information. That was amazing. And I did want to tell Mrs. Mathias I will definitely be reaching out to you, and I appreciate everything you had to say tonight, and I appreciate you bringing that to us. So.
Tonight, I'll just end comments with 2 celebrations, really. I didn't know we had this indoor percussion group. So we have a Rockingham County indoor percussion ensemble, and they placed first in a competition. I had to, do a little bit of digging around to get some information. I'm a former band player. I played in the band, played flute, and then I abandoned flute during marching band season for drums because you can't hear the flutes on the marching band field. And so I thought drums would be really cool. So I kind of have a special heart for percussion, but also one of my children plays drums in the middle school band. And so I'm really excited that we offer this indoor opportunity in the off season for marching band. And I've asked our Director of Fine Arts to get me some dates so I can travel and see and support. So I thought that was pretty awesome. They placed first in a recent competition. And then I also, on the same thread, want to honor Miss Harper, who is our band director at Pence, who was just recently named the Virginia Band and Orchestra Directors Association District 5 Band Director of the Year. And I just think that's pretty awesome. And as a parent of one of her students, I know how well-deserved that really is. It's a pretty cool honor. Her passion and dedication to the profession are to be commended. And I'll just give a little personal story here. When my middle child was registering for classes at Pence last year as a 6th grader, we, as parents, knew we wanted him in band for many reasons. And we even picked his instrument because he was having a hard time deciding. And so we picked drums. And he wasn't convinced that this was the path he should be taking. But sometimes I just think as parents, you need to kind of help your children discover a new avenue. But I just felt really strongly that once he got in band, he would fall in love with it. But we did tell him, look, just do it for a year. If you don't like it in 7th grade, you can pick something else. And wouldn't you know it, thank you, Mrs. Harper. He loved it. And by February, he was loving band. He signed up for another year of band all on his own. He even auditioned for jazz band and made it. And that's because of Miss Harper being so awesome and making bands a lot of fun. And shout out to all middle school band directors, because that's a hard crowd, for sure, a really hard crowd. And the fact that you can get 6th graders and beginning, never played an instrument students, you can get those students to make music by December of their first, just a few short months is pretty amazing. And they, our band directors and Miss Harper especially do it with a great sense of humor. So congratulations to the Fine Arts Department on a couple of great honors. I think that's all we have for this evening. Oh, Ms. Cave.
I apologize. I didn't realize that Ms. Mathias was still here. And when you said her name, it reminded me. Earlier in the year, last year, I want to say it was back in March, I had asked you about that opioid abatement authority grants or something. I think you had reached out to Mr. Rice and he had sent some good information on maybe he didn't know if that was the best way to seek those grants or if we could go some other, I think he called it a better way about funding those types of things. And I think the school board has talked about having more people come in and speak to our students about those types of things. So I think this would be a really great time, like we're not busy enough, but to sort of get back into that and start looking into it because it is a problem. And I talk about it a lot. And so I think because marijuana is now legal, people think it's okay. And I have always been on the total polar opposite end of that. And so thank you for coming and saying what you said tonight. And yeah, if we could maybe look into, doing whatever we have to do to sort of boost that, program to, teach our kids about drugs, not just in health, but really, I don't know, what can we say? Reach their souls about the decisions that they're making for their life. That would just give me great joy, Dr. Shiflett. So anyways, I just wanted to remind you of that. Thank you.
Mrs. Thies, do you have an extra sheet that you gave the board that I can give the safety director? Can I have one? Can I have an extra one?
So, Mrs. Cave, I haven't forgotten. And Mrs. Kaufman's been working, Liza Kaufman's been working on this for us. And has made some communications, and we have some materials that in the coming weeks, perhaps we'll be able to review and determine if we would like to utilize them. And it's grades 3 through 10. I can't remember the grade levels.
Programs for grades, the opioid abatement grant, there's curriculum for grades 3 through, really there's like an 11, 12 program, but for so really the focus that we requested review materials for would be grade 4, grade 6, and grade 9. Start there. Contact for the opioid abatement grant and our Virginia Cooperative Extension.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming tonight. Drive safe, stay warm. This meeting is adjourned.